You ever go back and watch an old movie or a TV show from the 80s and the 90s and say, whoa, wait a minute. Let's rewind that a second. Is that George Clooney? And then you start looking closer. Then you find out there's movies with Brad Pitt that have about 3 lines. Jim Carrey, before anybody knew what a Jim Carrey was. And then Samuel L. Jackson's story. I guess acting was part of his midlife crisis, but he showed up in something a long, long time ago for a few minutes, and I'm not even sure that I personally caught it. Nicolas Cage looking like he's about 17 years old in his start. And that's one of my favorite things about going back and watching old movies and television, because sometimes you're not just watching an old show. You're watching a nobody before they became a somebody, before the Oscars and the $20 million paychecks, before everybody in America knew who the hell they were. They were just another actor trying to get a part. And in some cases, they weren't even trying. So today we're counting down 10 actors we saw in the 80s before they blew up. And some of these are going to have you heading straight to YouTube afterward if you're not already there, because you're going to swear I'm making this shit up. Now, I'm not going to come at it like we haven't heard some of this. But if it's new, then I did my job. Hey everyone, I'm Chris, and welcome back to Average Joe Let's Talk About It. The podcast where we take a break from today's chaos to remember the moments, the music, the movies, the people, and the experiences that shaped Generation X. If today's episode brings back a memory, I'd love for you to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps more Gen Xers find these conversations and keeps our community growing. So starting off at number 10, Mr. Brad Pitt. Let's start with one that's almost hard to imagine. Because before Brad Pitt became, Brad Pitt, he was basically a guy standing in the background. Seriously, go back to 1987. Brad Pitt appeared in movies like Less Than Zero. Did not know that. I've seen the movie, maybe not enough. But then again, I haven't gone back. So I guess I'm going to have to take a trip. And No Way Out. Now, I've seen that movie in the movie theater when I thought that Kevin Costner was just a baby. I can't even imagine what Brad Pitt's role was in that. But a lot of his roles in the beginning, he wasn't even credited, including that one. So think about that. One of the most recognizable guys in the world, one of the greatest actors of his time, uncredited. I'm sure a lot of greats start out that way though, right? Let's not, we ain't fooling anybody by acting surprised. But television started giving him a little more to do. He appeared on Growing Pains, yeah, and had a reoccurring role on Dallas, if you were into that primetime soap opera phase. And if you watch those appearances now, you can obviously see him. But at the time, I don't remember. And I've seen all of those things I just mentioned. He's just another young actor showing up on television. Then 1991 happens. You guessed it, Thelma and Louise. Brad Pitt shows up as J.D. I didn't even know his name. I just know that he was in it. That's how much it really mattered back then, right? But suddenly people are asking, who's that guy? And pretty quickly, you get A River Runs Through It, Interview with a Vampire, Legends of the Fall, and who can forget Seven, right? Great movie. And then, of course, Brad Pitt becomes officially Brad Pitt. I don't think his looks or his physique back then had anything to do with that either. So here's some quick trivia. Before acting took off, Pitt famously supported himself with odd jobs, including driving limousines, dressing as a giant chicken for a restaurant promotion. I believe I've seen that in an interview. Imagine walking past that chicken and somebody telling you, yeah, that guy's going to be famous someday and one of the biggest movie stars in the world. Sure. Number 9, Meg Ryan. Before Meg Ryan became basically the face of romantic comedies, she was grinding away just like everyone else. And one of her earliest movie appearances was in 1981, and the movie was called Rich and Famous. Never heard of it. Then she spent time on the soap opera As the World Turns. Never watched it. But I know people who have. But I bet you they didn't know she was in it. And then in 1986, she pops up in a little movie called Top Gun. Right? Goose's wife, Carol Bradshaw. And she's good. She's funny. She's energetic. Probably in scenes where she was kind of written off as just wallpaper, but turned it into something better. So yes, good job. So now when you watch it, it's unmistakably Meg Ryan. But she's not the star. Not yet. 3 years later, maybe? Yes. When Harry Met Sally. What a great movie. Seeing that in the theater, and I don't care. I ain't ashamed. It was good cinema. But then, after that, everything changed. You see her in Sleepless in Seattle. You've got Mail. And she's become one of the defining movie stars of the 90s. Where'd she go? Quick trivia. Meg Ryan wasn't actually born Meg Ryan. What a surprise. Her full birth name is Margaret Mary Emily Ann Hyra. Sounds like she should have been a nun, but apparently it wasn't her calling. So yeah, Meg Ryan's probably a lot easier. Number 8, Nicolas Cage, one of my favorites. I don't know why some people diss on this guy, but he is the quintessential, I will play anything in any movie kind of movie star. But yes, this is one I love. So go watch Fast Times at Ridgemont High, 1982, and look carefully because old Nick Cage is in it, except he's credited as Nicholas Coppola. And everybody knows that he's like the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola, I believe. Yes. But Nicholas, old Nick, I like to call him Nick. We're on a first name basis. He didn't want people assuming he was getting acting jobs because of the family name. So he changed his last name. And that's how he became Nick Cage. His Fast Times role is tiny, and he's one of Brad's co-workers at the burger joint. I had no idea. I'm seriously going to have to go back and watch a lot of these. You could easily watch the movie and completely miss him, though. But just a few years later, you've got Valley Girl. Now, I do remember that.
Like tubular. Well, it's like a totally great day. It's like totally awesome. Gag me with a spoon.
Gag me with a spoon. Gag me with a spoon. Gag me with a spoon. Yeah, okay. Then Peggy Sue got married. Oh, that was good, right? Right. Okay. Raising Arizona, one of the best movies out there. I feel like, is that a Coen brother movie? I'm pretty sure it is. I could be wrong. Hey, if I am, that's all right. I can't get them all right. But Moonstruck, wow. And I saw that movie, and I wasn't about that life, but it's kind of grown on me. And Moonstruck was actually pretty good. So I could see how, you could win an Oscar. But I don't think he won it. I think it was Cher, crazy enough. Anyway, so suddenly, the random kid from Fast Times is one of the most interesting actors of his generation. The name Cage was partly inspired, though, by Marvel superhero Luke Cage. Wow, did not know that, which somehow makes Nicolas Cage even more Nicolas Cage, I suppose. Number 7, George Clooney. So some of you may know George from The Facts of Life. And yes, I think he was Joe's boyfriend. He rode a motorcycle. I'm not even sure what that dynamic was, but I do remember that I seen old George Clooney in The Facts of Life when I was growing up. So he went through some hair because if you remember, as he bounced around on television with ER, The Facts of Life, Roseanne, and of course, it's easy. Even with all those different hairstyles, it's George, old George. It just doesn't sound right to call him George Clooney. We're on a first name basis. So yeah. Right? You see him on Facts of Life and all those other television shows. He's well known. He got around. He was like the youngest guy with a full head of gray hair. I don't know. Chicks dig that. So, but it worked for years. And then 1994 rolled around, right? And that was the beginning of his shooting star, so to speak, because he got old Dr. Ross on his cue card for ER. And then it's over. He's a star. Boom. From there, it's just downhill and a lot of 6-figure paychecks, maybe even, is it 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? 7-figure paychecks after that? Sure. But you got From Dusk Till Dawn, Out of Sight, which, come on, man. Jennifer Lopez, it wasn't that great. I don't know if I would put that on a list of, big time roles. Ocean's 11, for sure. There are many in between that aren't even on this list, but he becomes the guy. And the guy from The Facts of Life becomes one of Hollywood's biggest leading men. So Clooney actually auditioned for years before becoming famous and has talked about driving friends to auditions so they could all save money. There was no overnight success here. It just looked overnight since ER happened. The struggle is real, even for those who don't struggle anymore. Number 6. Samuel L. Jackson. This one, I think most are familiar with thanks to the internet and everything else, but he wasn't right away famous. right? We all know that he was a man of a certain age when he got picked up and got more roles outside of supporting roles. But his first big break, believe it or not, in the 80s was Coming to America in 1988. Remember the guy who tries to rob McDowell's? Go back and watch it again. It's Sammy J. Yes, we're on a first name and last initial basis. Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson. He walks in with a shotgun, threatens everybody, and gets dealt with pretty quick. It's a tiny scene, but once you know it's him, you can't unsee it. Then the roles start getting bigger, of course. He gets Do the Right Thing. Now, when you get with Spike Lee, I'm sure your star is headed for another galaxy. That guy is a great writer and director. Jungle Fever, another one. And then 1994. Guess what? Love this film. Pulp Fiction. Old Jules Winfield. That's right. He's going to go wandering like in Kung Fu. And he don't eat pork. Jules Winfield. And Samuel L. Jackson goes from, hey, I've seen that guy before, to one of the most recognizable actors on earth and probably the most quoted, and we're talking about just one line. But hey, it's his. He owns it, or at least he should. If I was him, I would have to probably go and copyright or trademark motherfucker. So Samuel L. Jackson was already in his 40s when his movie career really started exploding, which is a great reminder that Hollywood's version of making it doesn't always happen when you're 22. Not always, but almost. It's not like I'm going to get my ass out there and start an acting gig anytime soon. Number 5, Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts didn't spend quite as long hiding in the background as some of the others. Once Hollywood noticed her, things moved fast. But go back to 1988. She appears in Satisfaction. That's a long forgotten movie name. I haven't heard that in a while. And then, of course, you got Mystic Pizza, and that's where people started paying attention. She was actually really good in it. And then even better in Steel Magnolias. I think she stole the show, personally. But at that point, you can almost watch a star being created in real time. Because 1 year later, that's right, Pretty Woman. And suddenly, Julia Roberts isn't an up-and-coming actress anymore. Yo, she's one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. But Julia wasn't the only Roberts trying to make it in Hollywood. And man, I was blown away when I found this out. Her older brother, Eric Roberts, was already an established actor. I don't know about that, because he's more of like a B-flick type of actor to me. But in any case, yeah, brother and sister. Who knew? And years later, their niece, Emma Roberts, which we all know from horror film and television fame, she would enter the business too. And that family apparently doesn't believe in desk jobs. Number 4, one of everybody's favorites, and this is fantastic because young Jim Carrey looks like he's constantly trying to convince somebody, trust me, this is going to work. Carrey was doing stand-up while he was still a teenager, and I've seen some of it, and I can tell you, it wasn't great at first, but it kind of took off. I mean, I guess he just had to get comfortable, and then from there, he just was himself, and nobody can deny Jim Carrey. Then he get into television, and in 1984, he starred in a sitcom called The Duck Factory. Yeah, I've never heard of it either. Probably because it only lasted one season. But a lot of things do these days. But I can tell you right now, I remember a lot of one-season shows and have been super disappointed to find out that they were too expensive to make. I don't think this was the case. I just think maybe it sucked. But he also appeared in my favorite movie of all time. And when I say that, I mean for him, because it was probably the closest that you're going to get to him being somewhat normal in a strange movie like Once Bitten. So yeah, 1985, Once Bitten, plays the unsuspecting, kind of nerdy character, right? Gets turned into a vampire, has a little fling with, I don't know if they called them cougars back then, but that's what it was. But if you watch early Jim Carrey, all the pieces are already there. You just got to pay close attention in the early on stages before he really came into himself. You know, like the expressions and his physical comedy and his energy. I almost want to do impressions of him. It's very, very hard not to. But Hollywood hadn't quite figured out what to do with him yet. And I don't think they still know what to do with him yet. But that's okay. He wouldn't be him if it wasn't that way. And then, of course, everybody remembers, just let me tell you something, right? He gets the Living Color gig in 1990. And people really started noticing because then he comes out of his shell and he gets to be ridiculous. And so obviously he gets a little typecast because of that. But he works those roles so well that there's no reason to move him out of that typecasting. And he loves that shit. So Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and then, of course, the next one, then The Mask and Dumb and Dumber, and all of that in the same year. I mean, that's not a bad breakout. I mean, he basically came in and kicked the door off the hinges and said, I'm here. And he's never left. He might be a little cuckoo, but he may have always been cuckoo. Before becoming famous, Carrey reportedly wrote himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered, dated it several years into the future, and carried it with him as motivation. That's pretty smart. But guess what? By the mid-90s, he could actually cash one. Number 3, Denzel Washington. Denzel, I think he likes to be called, is interesting because unlike some of the people on this list, his rise wasn't built around one goofy, forgotten cameo. It's more like watching somebody steadily become undeniable over time. And one of his feature films was Carbon Copy in 1981. I think I vaguely remember that. I'm going to have to pull this list together and go back and watch all of these so I can be informed. Then in 1982, he joins the cast of the famous medical drama of its time before ER, and that's right, St. Elsewhere. I can almost hear the show tune in my head, and he stays for years. He was an amazing character. It was almost like Denzel was on the same path that George Clooney was, except Denzel got there quicker because he started earlier. It also might be an age thing. I don't know. Anyway, but if you're watching in the 80s, you already knew Denzel Washington, but he wasn't yet Denzel Washington. So you got to wait for the movies to come out, like Cry Freedom and Glory back in 1989. And that's the turning point right there. And I don't need to run the list. You've already got it in your head. If you're on this show, you already know where you need to be. So his performance in Glory earned Washington his first Academy Award. That's right, his first of a couple. And that was for Best Supporting Actor. And then he won Best Actor for, yes, you've got it, I Am King Kong, Training Day. So that guy you were watching on a hospital show back in the early 80s, yeah, he's another one of those most famous actors of his generation. Number 2, Johnny Depp. Here's one that younger audiences sometimes don't even realize. Did you know that Johnny Depp's first major movie appearance wasn't some strange Tim Burton movie? Of course you did. If you're as old as I am and you're a part of this generation makeup, then you know it was in a horror movie and one of the all-time greats, A Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984. That's right. Who could forget Glenn, Nancy's boyfriend, that gets basically sucked up by his waterbed, and then all you get to see after the fact is just blood, and a ridiculous amount of blood squirting up all over the place coming out of that waterbed. Not exactly Jack Sparrow. But then after that, he gets 21 Jump Street in 1987. And guess what? Teenage girls just can't get enough of him. I'll keep it PG, but you know what I wanted to say. But yeah, everybody, including the girls, knew who Johnny Depp was. But Depp, he wasn't interested in simply being a teen idol. Afterward, he started choosing increasingly unusual movies, hence the reason we get to see him in some of the greatest movies ever put on the screen by Tim Burton. So things like Edward Scissorhands, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, Ed Wood, and eventually, of course, Pirates of the Caribbean, and every other Tim Burton movie that we've seen that we absolutely love. So one of those things I was saying earlier, trivia on Johnny Depp basically is this. He moved to LA, not to be an actor. He wanted to play music, and he was just doing the acting thing as a side hustle so he could pay for working on being a musician. You see how that worked out pretty well, at least for us. Amber Heard, you ain't taking nothing from us. And then we get to the final actor in this category. Number 1, Tom Hanks. And we all know, okay, Tom Hanks, he needs no introduction. He needs no reasoning or logic behind why he's number 1. And if you don't believe he's number 1, you can fight me in the comments, but we'll get into that later. But Tom Hanks, because if you grew up knowing Tom Hanks from Forrest Gump, Saving Private Ryan, Apollo 13, Castaway, it is super easy to forget where he started, right? Who remembers The Bosom Buddies, 1980, Remember the premise? Two guys have to dress up like women so they can get into the affordable female-only apartment building that they needed to live in. That's the entire show. I don't remember how long it lasted, maybe a season, who knows? But it was hilarious, and I'd go back and I'd probably watch it again. So future two-time Academy Award winner Tom Hanks is one of those two men dressing up like women. So guess what? Tom Hanks was in drag before drag was cool. But here's an even better one. In 1982, he appeared on Happy Days. I didn't know this. I haven't seen Happy Days in forever. I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch this episode because this episode is apparently epic because he plays a former classmate of Fonzie named Dr. Dwayne Twitchell, and he gets into a fight with Fonzie. Think about that sentence. Tom Hanks fought Fonzie. Then the movie career started. Started off slow with movies like Splash, The Man with One Red Shoe, Bachelor Party, The Money Pit, but Big. I think Big was the one. And then we moved into the end of the 80s, and then things take a different turn. He starts getting more serious roles. Movies like Philadelphia, Forrest Gump, Apollo 13, Saving Private Ryan, and then well known and loved for his role as Woody in Toy Story. But how about The Green Mile? And we've already mentioned Castaway. So the guy from Bosom Buddies becomes Tom Hanks, and he became only the second actor in Academy Award history to win Best Actor in consecutive years for Philadelphia, and then again the following year for Forrest Gump. The first person to do that was Spencer Tracy, and that is a pretty wild and long, windy road from fighting Fonzie. The thing I love the most about these old appearances, you go back and you find these clips, and it changes the way you think about celebrities. They didn't just walk into greatness. You know, it was work to get where they got. And I know that sometimes they say dumb things and it diminishes all the work they put into their lives. And we kind of look down our noses at them because, you know, they have a platform that they say they want to utilize in order to make the world a better place. Well, good on you, but I don't care. Just get on the screen, do what you do best, and make me smile, make me cry, make me clap, make me cheer. I don't give a shit what your politics are. But I digress. So because we're looking backward, we already know what happens. So when you see like Brad Pitt walk onto the screen, these days it's Brad Pitt, right? We've kind of become desensitized. The honeymoon period is over. But when we see him on the screen, we know that it's probably going to be a halfway decent movie. But audiences watching back in 1987, us watching back in 1987, Thelma and Louise, no idea. Just some dude. And True Romance, right? That's right. He's getting high. He's smoking the honey bear. How about that? Just popped into my head. Thought I'd throw it out there and, yeah, bring it back. When George Clooney showed up on The Facts of Life, nobody knew Ocean's 11 was coming. When Jim Carrey was doing The Duck Factory, nobody knew who Jim Carrey was because nobody watched The Duck Factory. If you did, good on you. Tell me about it. But who knew that in 10 years we would have Ace Ventura, The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, and Living Color with Fire Marshal Bill. Just let me tell you something. I can't stop doing it. And when Tom Hanks was fighting Fonzie, nobody was thinking, there's a future two-time Oscar winner. And maybe that's what makes these clips so much fun. You're watching somebody before the world knows what's about to happen. Now, I know I missed somebody. Actually, I'm counting on it. So tell me in the comments, what's the best before they were famous appearance that you remember? Give me the actor and the movie or the TV show. And if we get enough good ones, we'll do a part 2 and a part 3 if necessary. And we could do lots of parts because there are plenty more where these came from. And here's another question. Which one on this list surprised you the most? For me, there's just something about going back and seeing Samuel L. Jackson, Rob McDowell's, or Tom Hanks throwing down with Fonzie that never gets old. If you enjoyed this trip back to the 80s, hit like, subscribe to Average Joe. Let's talk about it. And send this episode to that friend who always says, wait, wasn't that guy in? I'm Chris. This is Average Joe. Let's talk about it. And I'll see you on the next one. Before you go, I'd love to hear your story. Every episode may start with a memory, but it doesn't end until you share yours. So leave a comment below and join the conversation. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with another Gen Xer who will appreciate a trip down memory lane. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, because the memories may belong to the past, but the stories are still worth telling. I'm Chris, This is Average Joe. Let's talk about it, and we'll see you next time.